Um, all right, let's continue the conversation we just had.
Yeah.
Fun stuff.
Yeah, let's see if I can remember all this stuff.
Okay, Laura.
Well, yeah, welcome everybody to another Ka Ta See Healing Talk. I am with some of my favorite people today, and we already started talking without you. So we'll weave you into today's talk now and see if we can remember all the juicy stuff that we were excited about. Sitting here next to me is my buddy Lora. And also on the screen are our teachers, our elders, and our favorites. We have Helmut and Kay, and we've been studying with them in a form of apprenticeship, which isn't what I originally thought, just a great marketing term called apprenticeship. But it's actually a form of study. And today's topic, I kind of was interested in learning about is about the Ka Ta See Apprenticeship, the benefits of learning this way, because it's different than a lot of other spiritual classes and courses that are out there. Is why we study in apprenticeship form. In why we'd want to learn these things through apprenticeship. And I think I'm going to stop there. I have more questions, but I think I want to see where Kate goes with this. And then I can list out my amazing other questions and maybe let Laura talk at one point. So, Kay, I pass it on to you.
All right. Well, apprenticeship, it implies something that goes in more depth and a longer time and a lot more personal interaction. And you could compare that to a modern teacher. They're both teaching methods. And with a modern teacher, most teachers we're aware of are teaching in schools, or even sometimes in homeschools, but mostly it's big schools, and there's a lot of kids, and they are hustled into the room. There's a good 30 of them in each classroom at any given time, and the teachers very often these days, not for the younger kids, but for kids that are getting to be 10, 11, 12, 13, to have individual teachers for individual subjects. And the classes are still, at least 30 students in the class, and the teacher will have a little less than an hour to be with these kids and teach their subject. And the subject is prescribed, dictated to the teacher, and what to teach and how to teach. And they try to feed that out to the kids as fast as they can, get through the hour and get to the next group. And there just isn't a whole lot more personal contact. And there's no time to go into great depth, or there's no time, and it's certainly not the way of schools these days, to teach children how to think. Just teach them about attention or how to think. It just doesn't happen. It's not part of the curriculum. It's not their goal. But with an apprenticeship, there's so much time and this spending time with a working master who's it has to be producing work during the day and go through all the methodology of their trade and how they do it, how they live with it, how they live their life. And the students end up getting an awful lot more attention and seeing the real thing. They're seeing and they're living the real thing. Even when they're brand new apprentices in the old way of doing things, they'd be the gopher. They'd be the one carrying the boxes around, and they'd go get this and get the coffee, but they're seeing everything, and they're being the ways of what the master is doing is being described to them as they're seeing it. And little by little, they're taught how to do it themselves. They're instructed and they're monitored and corrected and see how it fits into life, how it fits into everyday life. So this is the way I was taught. These beautiful, beautiful ways of learning and living and being, these spiritual teachings. And this is what they asked me to do, to copy them in a way, but I have to make it right for my own culture. I can't do it the way they did it in the tribe with their own people, because we don't live that way. And we don't think that way. So translated into our culture, teaching people these ways of thinking, which are very, very, very different. They're very, very uniquely different compared to the modern culture, what all of us grew up in. The modern culture and regular modern schools, and the shuffling of the students and the teachers, and the going from one classroom to the next, and worrying about your teenage social life and all that kind of you're far more worried with all that stuff than what you have to learn in class. And there just wasn't any personal contact. Rarely was there personal instruction. And the way I was taught, it was very personalized to me and my way of thinking and my life, and how I would be able to just start off learning these new ways of thinking, these new ways of learning how to use my attention. That's what our teachings are all about, is how to change that, how to change how you use your attention, how to shift it, make it far more productive and not machine-like that we get in the modern world, not controlled. We learn how to let other people control our attention in the modern world. And then when you really think about what that is and what that means, we let other people control our attention. And it's not a good thing. It's a really bad thing. And these days, the attention span of everybody of any age is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. I think it was timed by these scientists that goldfish had a longer attention span than the average human today. Now think about that. That is really scary. So it means that your mind is just in one subject and looking at that, and then it's flipping to another thing, and then it's off over here and it gets distracted, and then it'll look, it's just scattered so many places. And that's what we learn how to do. They want to, those who taught us that way want to keep it that way, because they want us asleep and they want us controlled. So in the apprenticeships that I had with Demano and Chia Hetaka of Peru, that's the old Peruvian ways from Lemuria, and also with my woman teacher who taught me the really early pre-flood Egyptian teachings. She never gave me permission to use her name, so that's why I don't name her. But she was a brilliant teacher. She was American. She had a very good mastery of the English language, and I think she taught her subject really well. And the Egyptian studies were even harder for me to learn because they were way different than modern American. Our muggle bubble learning ways, and they were very different. On the surface, they seemed really different than the Hetakas Peruvian way of doing things. All the names for everything was different. The way they looked at it was kind of all shifted a little, but it turned out they were almost identical in what they were ultimately teaching. And it all had to do with our attention. So that's the biggest thing when we're starting out with the apprenticeship, what we're doing. We're doing all kinds of, sometimes there's lectures, sometimes short, sometimes long, and lots of practices and lots of ceremonies to teach what the lectures were about. The talking about it was to familiarize me with all three of the teachers in their own way. They would talk and describe ceremonies, describe the ways of living, the ways of thinking the best that they could. But that's just getting somebody used to it, kind of used to the concepts and used to the process. It doesn't give them the learning of the actual exercise or ceremony. One has to do those actual things. It's in the process of the exercises or the ceremonies where we really learn what all of that is all about. Sometimes you realize after doing the ceremony a few times what it was really all about, what it really means, and what it taught you, what it gave you, the gifts that it gives you. And that's the experience. That's the experiential part. Another thing that I was extremely blessed with was being able to have at least two of my teachers, the Hetakas, who were really, really advanced in their awakeness. They never grew up in any Muggle teaching, in modern American teaching, or the modern ways of thinking that are now covering the earth in so many places. They didn't have that exposure, and they didn't have our food and our poisons and all that kind of thing to hinder them. So their way of being. To be able to see somebody live that, to demonstrate what that's like. That's a teaching in itself. That's a huge, huge teaching. You get to feel it from them. You get to see it from them. And that's what I do my very best. Helmut does his very best to live it and let it show. Let it flow out. Because that's one of the really big pieces of the teaching. And when we started having trouble being able to travel, first was 9/11. Nobody wanted to travel after 9/11. So we couldn't take any sacred objects on the plane without them being searched and touched and stuff like that. So we had people come to us. We just changed the whole picture. Instead of going to them, they came to us. And then COVID happened. Nobody traveled anywhere. We needed to start doing some of this online. All the way back from 9/11, we had to start. And I'm glad that we did, because it's a whole different kind of a thing to prepare for. Helmut had to learn all that technology, and me too, some of it. But we found that teaching this way online is just as effective as teaching it in person. It still works. And there's a gloriousness about being in person with your teacher. I gotta admit. But all the juice, all the juju, all the learning, listening to lectures, time to practice, the doing ceremony, being in ceremony together, it still works on Zoom or whatever venue that we are traveling on these days. And that was a real boost. That's made a huge difference in being able to engage people and offer them these teachings where they don't have to travel across the ocean to get here, or even a bigger ocean. We had people coming from Australia and New Zealand and is it Singapore? It was somewhere over there, and all over the place. A lot of Europe, and even had one student that lived in Egypt for a while. But that's another story. As long as they can speak English, then I didn't have any problems to teach them any of this, and they're learning beautifully. When I started out, and this is the way I teach the apprentices now, it's all about attention and how we use it, and to start watching your own attention. What are you doing with your attention right now? Where is it? What are you doing with it? Do you have a second gadget going at the same time you're trying to watch this, and you catch going back and forth between them? That's okay. But your attention's pretty divided. It's pretty scattered. We need to start watching what we're doing, how we do what we do inside of ourselves, and what is crowding our attention. All kinds of old teachings, things that we were brought up with, that the culture pounds down on us from all over the place. all this information that isn't even really true. There's so much of what we think we know isn't even really true. It never has been. And we're just starting as a culture to find out those things, that all that stuff isn't true. And we notice it. You can't help but to notice it when you're paying attention to your attention. And you start noticing other people's attention and what they're doing with it and how it gets so mixed up and how they're caught in their old beliefs and trapped. They're imprisoned in their old beliefs. And we get them to see it and start breaking that prison down, breaking the prison down. My teachers called that our box that we live in, our cultural box. It's like a little cardboard box. And we're all squished inside there. And there's no windows and no doors. And it's just a big TV screen. You got headsets. And you're tuned in to what they feed you, the information, the pictures, the sound, stories, whatever. They just feed that what they want you to know or think or believe and feed it into the box. And you think that's real. You don't know any different. That's the way we grow up in the modern world. So that's what we do at the beginning of the apprenticeship. And once you start breaking that box, then you can do all kinds of things. You start having access to your own spirit, your own beingness, your consciousness. And you learn that you could take your consciousness and take it outside your body, move it somewhere else. Like, distant learning, like the spies. The spies do. Or you could take it to a spiritual place and go talk to some spirits and have some learning from them. Something that they would like to show you or teach you or do for you or help you. And that's just the beginning. There's so much more. There's so much more. That's just the beginning. There's healing, learning how to heal yourself and heal other people and heal the world with the weavings and all these symbols that are part of that. If you're a symbol junkie like I always was, it's just very intriguing. So much knowledge in the symbols. They're so beautiful. So what other kinds of questions have you got worked up there?
I have more, but that's a quick comment. I mean, it was such a different learning already. There was so much to unwind and relearn that the way in this form of apprenticeship, with the ongoing mentorship that we have, it really has to be practiced. And the way that the mentorship supports that unwinding so you can practice. And because things come up and there's questions, there's no way I would have been able to learn this, truly learn it, if there hadn't been just taking a 3-day course or any 3-day class. How other structures are, you're given your piece of paper and you go, it all now. There was no follow-up, no one to come back and say, hey. And that's the different, it's this because your desire for success is evident in all of this doing too, for sure. But it was, even in my school classes and college and everything else, everything was taught in you learn it, you regurgitate it on a test, and you go. And so it was like, this has just been this beautiful like practice that you can come back with your questions. Now practice this that builds on that and come back with the questions on that. Now practice this. And it's, it just keeps building on it and building on it and allowing that, like you were saying, that mastery of attention to start happening. But here's my other question. So there was a lot of gratitude in that statement. If you heard it. I like the form. I mean, it's the only way I've realized that if it wasn't for that form of apprenticeship, I wouldn't have learned these things. I would have thought I might have known them. I would have had the stamp of approval from somebody that said I knew them, but I wouldn't have ever really known them. Because I swear I'm still knowing them because I'm still practicing them. So one of the things that you said, we have to step into apprenticeship to learn this stuff. But I remember from my very first mind-blowing level 1 apprenticeship classes, you had mentioned that those first levels of classes were something that everybody learned at puberty in the Ka Ta See thing. And so we're like learning it at, say maybe, I'm almost 52 now. I started at 42. So I'm a little past puberty. I'm kind of on the other end of the spectrum. But there's so many other, I guess if I would love for you to talk to that, because we step into apprenticeship to learn this, but in the tribe, it sounded like it was just a part of being human.
Yeah, well put. Yeah, it was a part of being human. The first thing that they start learning even before they walk, and that's song. What is song? And the song means, it's a poetic word that's used to describe our own beingness, our totality, like our soul, our spirit, our everything that we are in our consciousness, and it includes our physical body for this lifetime and every other lifetime. But currently, we're in this physical body, and so it has to do with right now with this one, and everything else. And some people, the Egyptians included, this word song would include what they call high self. High self, middle self, low self. Low self would be subconscious. Middle self is your everyday consciousness. High self is what you learn when you learn how to be awake. You learn how to access the greater part of your own beingness. You're expanding your consciousness. You're touching into your ancientness as a being that lives throughout the universe, at different times, at different places. And we learn this concept of song, who we are, what we are. It's what it means. Who we are and what we are. What the feeling of that is. There's a special feeling to every song, and no two songs are exactly the same in this universe. None. So we learn this as soon as we're born. This is part of who and what we're being taught. So here we are as modern culture people, adults, most of us starting. We're learning it somewhere else in life, but they start learning it from day one. And then the rest of the things that are in the class are what they're learning at puberty. And that has to do with these more advanced attitudes, ideas about attention. Of course, you're familiarized at puberty with things that you need for your own life and your tribe that have to do with your sexuality and possibly getting married and having children and dealing with a household and for them hunting and gathering and cooking and all that kind of stuff that goes on at puberty as well. But these very special concepts of what we can do with our attention, who and what we are, that is beyond what we were as children, way beyond, and very plastic, very flexible. We learn how to journey. And the kids at their puberty rites would involve a journey, their very first journey, for probably most of them, unless it happens spontaneously sometime younger. And there's so many different kinds of ceremonies that teach you about your physical senses and teach you about your spirit senses. Before puberty, they were mostly involved with their physical senses and learning a little bit about spirit senses because that's what all the adults were doing with parts of their lives, using physical and energetic senses. And they find out that the real art of going hunting had a lot to do with talking to the spirits of the animals or the plants before you went. You had a big ceremony. In North America, that was often like a sweat lodge. Indians would go in the sweat lodge and they'd pray about it and they'd talk to the spirits and who would like to come and offer themselves to be the food for my family and my tribe so that we might live. And they had a much better turnout and hunting experience the next day. And the same with the Hetakas. The animal would show up and be right there in front of them. And usually the species that they were trying to contact. But in the journeys they might be taking, in ceremonies the day before, when they're trying to contact a specific animalation, if that animal wasn't around anywhere and couldn't show up, it was just not their season to be in that location, they send you somewhere else. And then in spirit, you get that instruction, you go to the suggested nation and ask them and do ceremony with them and thanking. Everything they learn when they're growing up, that everything is involving this gratitude, this love, and this tremendous gratitude and thanks for everything in their lives, absolutely everything. And this is just daily living stuff. But as a modern person in our modern culture, we don't know gratitude for nothing. It just isn't. Even if they kind of talk about it every now and again in church, the Christian church, they don't know the same level of gratitude. They don't live it. they're not remembering it when they step out of the church. And what these kids learn, even when they're before puberty and learning it as kids, their church is everywhere. Their church is everywhere. And everything is part of God. Everything is, part of the spirits, sacred, everything that's around them. And it's a whole different way of thinking, that everything is alive. That just by itself, everything is alive. That just does not happen in modern culture. It's not part of the teachings that's shoved down the modern culture kids' throats. But in old Egypt and in this Peruvian way of living, this tribal way, everything is alive. Even the space, that's called the field, the space of things. And that means the space between your atoms, the space out there, that doesn't have a lot of matter in it. Seems kind of empty out there. And it's blackness up there, but it's full of life and energy and consciousness. And every atom, every grain of sand, everything's alive. And when we're told this, my teachers talked to me about this. They would tell this to me, and I'm just like, ooh, man. I was originally a science major, and following my father and my brother. And I love science. And we're not raised with any religious group or going to churches or anything like that, unless it was to go to Easter Sunday to show off a particular set of clothes. That happened more than once. But the church, the place to pray, the place to have a ceremony is everywhere and anywhere. Some places are even a little hotter, a little better, and more conducive to spiritual energy than others. But when you think about the way the Hetakas lived, they're out there in the Amazon jungle. And they were way out there in mountainous territory. And it's nature, pure nature everywhere for miles and miles and miles. Sometimes some ruins, really ancient ruins. But mostly it's nature. And not that many people are going and coming or traveling around in that space. So you feel what is there. And they started at a pretty early age learning how to feel things that and recognize what we call a signature feeling of something, because everything's unique, a unique song. Each song has a different feeling. Each thing, each tree, each rock, each animal, each person, the sky, everything has a different feel to it. Even a weather system. If you've done some traveling and met the wind spirits in different places, if one of them comes to your neighborhood where you are currently, you recognize that. That's your wind friend, the cloud friend from way back over there in Oregon. Gonna be here for a day or two, saying hi. So in the classes, that's a really big thing that starts early on recognizing that everything is alive and everything has its unique feeling, its unique signature. And we learn that because if we don't learn at least the concept and the ability to feel these things, then the rest that comes after that is gonna whoosh, it's gonna pass you right by. You'll never notice it was even there. So I hope that answers that question.
It's fabulous. I love the way the classes are set up, and it's just what you said. There's so much we can do once we capture our attention, and so much in these first levels about capturing our attention. And we're all, there wasn't like this person's special and that person's special. It's just, we all have these abilities to do these things. They just need to be taught again. They need to be coached back out and practiced back out. And I keep going to the word practice, and experienced. And that's so much of, the ongoing studies in Ka Ta See is just giving back to us what in the Ka Ta See tribe was just nurtured from the beginning and mirrored. The children saw it in the adults and could mirror it. We need to apprentice that as you are mirroring it for us. And it makes, for those who stay in the studies and really go through it, it makes such a success. You can be successful. You just, if you don't give in to the babble. You have thoughts? I'm doing a lot of talking.
Yeah,
Question for Kay.
I want to talk about what I've noticed as far as the benefits of the apprenticeship program, because there've been many. First of all, the apprenticeship program has a way of dismantling the programming that we've had in our society. It helps us to look at what we're experiencing in a whole nother way. It shifts and transforms our consciousness, and we get to do it with a community of people. So you're developing all of these experiences. I mean, it's one thing to have, like, I read the books years ago, and I did try learning from the books and implementing them. I had some amazing experiences, but it's tenfold when you're in the apprenticeship program and you have somebody you can share things and you bounce stuff off, and it's a huge difference. I want to read something. I have this little booklet that says wonderful things, and I often will write down stuff that Kay says, and I'll pull over my mind and try and figure it out. And I wrote this one day. I didn't put the date on here, and I should have. It says, "Your greatest joy will be discovered as you cultivate within yourself the habits of mind, the habits of body, the habits of choice that begin to align what you think, what you see, and what you do." I'm like, wow. And it's true.
Kay said that.
Yeah, I wrote it in here. This is my Kay book.
That was good, Kay. That was a good quote.
And it's true. I mean, nobody else can wake you up, but they can lead you to a place where you can experience. And from that place, it opens it up so that you see things and feel things differently. That's all I can say. Is it just says the apprenticeship program has really transformed how I see the world, how I interact with the world.
And it's fantastic to have this. I mean, the community is definitely a part of it. You've got all these different people at different levels of doing this work. And so as you're apprenticing, you're also seeing, the level 2 apprentice, the person right above you. And I worked for a garden center, did marketing for them. And the owner used to put out the big, glorious master specimen. And then he'd put out the 4 inches that he was selling, all the 4 inches. And he's like, his quote was always, show them the dream and sell them the promise. And I use that in this class a lot in these apprenticeships, in these courses, because, you walk the talk. You see your living, and you experience what somebody's like in awakening. And so, not that you're a dream, you're real, but it's like all of our dreams are Oz, as I like to say, but and then you get these promises, you, because of the form of apprenticeship, you get to practice it, you get your own promise in your own, oh boy, here comes the tears, in your own experience with it. It was like, I did that. And it's in that I did that you start that aspect of falling in love with yourself too. Like you start, you're like, because you did it, and instead of looking out there at, and trying to, it was like, you're not looking outside yourself anymore. You're being taught how to have these experiences within experience, and I keep going back, the form of apprenticeship with this mentoring that we have every month. And you, just like your teachers, will listen to our questions, and answer them until we, you just, you're in it with us. And I know it sounds strange in a Zoom land, in a virtual land, but you have that way of wrapping us in, and just being with us in these experiences that you do, just like these classes, in a tribe, you learn how to cut the fish, and then you go cut the fish yourself, and you probably left a few fish bones, and then you try it again. But it's because it has to be, all of this winding has to be practiced, and it's the ongoing presence of keep learning, keep repeating it, that really starts chipping away, the Muggle world habits. It was what I was waiting for this whole time. And truly, the things you're teaching in these classes, I couldn't find anywhere else either. I couldn't get a weekend and a piece of paper on any of this shit or stuff. I didn't say that one. On all this beautiful, wonderful learning that you keep handing us more.
You mentioned the mentorship, and I think that's a really nice part of all of this, because when we do the mentorship, it's essentially a Q&A time, and you guys, you just ask anything, whatever you got on your mind. There's no dumb questions, no such thing in the Hetakas world or the ancient world, and we just go till it goes, till you don't have any more questions.
Or help gets hungry,
or you get generating a lot more, and you're just like, okay, I'm next mentorship.
Sometimes I'll give an answer, and that just makes more questions pop up, and they ask them again. They ask them the next question, and the next one, and the next one, and until they don't have any more.
It's the best.
Everybody has a chance. Nobody's interrupted. Everybody has a chance, and get to tell your experiences if that's what you want to do. If you had a really cool spiritual experience and want to talk about it, or just some daily thing that happened, coincidence kind of a experience. And, you know, people sometimes talk about those kinds of things. And so I think it gives the student a chance to learn and grow in all the ways that they would be living and growing if they were living with their teacher. And, you know, little kids growing up with the elders who already know.
I remember finishing level 1 before Zoom. So this was the telecalls. And I was so excited there was telecalls. I mean, that was the thing. I mean, I'm one of those people who are grateful that there is an online, you know, because I wouldn't have been able to get away and come in person all the time at that point in my life. And you know, I remember, you know, level 1 ended, you know, and it went on for like 18 weeks. And every class had these like day-long Q&As because everybody, I mean, it was just going, I'd come out, my husband's like, oh, you're back. Because I'd be gone all day and it was like, I didn't even notice the day had gone until my tush went numbed. It was like there was so much good information because I might not have had questions, but somebody else had questions. And then that was like, oh, you realize I was assuming answers or my mind just didn't go there. But I remember the end of level 1 and going, no. You just blew my mind because level 1 had, you know, and I'd taken all sorts of other spiritual practices, modern shamanism, mediumship, all of it, and nothing had blown my mind like this. We cannot end this, you know, I'm not, you know, I was just terrified of this ending because so much was opening up with these practices. So much was happening there, you know, that any form of silence with, you know, not having access to you guys was terrifying me. And I think all of a sudden I voiced that and you're like, well, we're going to start this mentorship. And I can just, you know, it was like, oh, thank goodness. I mean, you don't open people up like that and just abandon them. Because there is, I mean, there is I can promise you stepping into these studies, and we all know it because we experienced it. It's just like, that was their all, you know, it was just like this opening of like, and again, the mentorship. The mentorship's everything. It's my favorite day of the month.
Mine too.
Yeah.
One of my favorite days of the month too. One of my favorite classes. Never know what kind of question is going to pop up. What we end up talking about. Sometimes questions will kind of start a wave of a subject that just everybody starts chiming in that they had this experience or they got this question or that's connected to that. And they're so glad that it came up because I keep forgetting to ask about it. And then we just spend the whole day there. Then you guys just keep asking questions until you're all empty. All of you are empty. No more words.
For that day.
Yeah. It's amazing how they all tie together too. And sometimes I'll be thinking a question or I've written it down and I'm just waiting to ask my question, and the next sentence you answer it. Somebody asks the same question and you answer. It's so cool.
It is really cool. Did you have another question?
Oh, that's what I was just going to say. I was
Yeah.
just amazing how it all just ties together. Just the whole learning process and everybody that's in the mentorship as well. Just, I learned so much from everybody else's questions.
It's surprising. People from the modern world have no idea how much the other people's questions and then the answer from that is going to teach them how much they learn from each other. is just astounding. And sometimes people think of questions that you never would have thought of. And it's just a brilliant experience. Yeah, I really love it.
Well, and that's huge, Kay. I have to say, I had the instructor, if you had more than one instructor, that if you asked questions, you weren't listening. You know, they basically took it as a complete offense. Teaching that it was all back on you. So the whole class was terrified ever to ask a question, you know, of the spiritual practice teacher. It was like, don't ask a question because, man, you're going to be blacklisted because you didn't. And so, of course, we're all doing it wrong because no one understood anything. But they got paid and went on their way, you know. But so I went from that, you know, into, you know, I've just, you know, been surrounded with the societies like you don't ask questions. You know,
modern culture, school, in college, it's rare to find a teacher who will let you ask questions or doesn't even scorn you in one way or another for asking a question.
and you're just the opposite. I mean, the polar opposite. Your joy in repeating yourself has been lovely. Thank you. You're like, well, let me say it this way and that way until you can get past the, you know, the programming that we have that allows it to come in. It's, you know, there's so many times you've repeated yourself and it's like finally sunk in year 2 or maybe not that long. But you know, it's that, you know, that immense patience, you know, to allow us to actually learn these experiences, you know, or to learn and be allowed the experience instead of telling us.
You can't really tell people something and expect anything to happen, expect them to get it. Life just doesn't work that way. Learning doesn't happen that way. When the teacher should be guiding you. They can't really teach you the whole, as one of my teachers used to say, the whole banana. You can't get the whole banana from the teacher. You got to find it yourself and then eat it yourself. So my teachers repeated a lot, especially the Hetakas. And with the Hetakas, there was a language difference. And one of the things that always popped up with questions was they'd say something in their broken English and they'd be describing, you know, a task that I was to do maybe, or something, you know, something like that, or the way something works. And I'd be thinking, ooh, did they mean this thing or did they mean this thing? Or what is that word? I don't, you know, what are they trying to say? Maybe the pronunciation wasn't very good, or just me, but they would let me ask questions about it. And I had to learn how to ask questions that made sense to them. Because, you know, I had to learn that, okay, what they just said, they didn't enunciate, you know, the English is just not comprehensible, or the concept was not comprehensible, or maybe the analogy, they were using some animal, you know, picture of the story of the life of this animal from their life, that animal I never saw in my whole, not even on YouTube or anything, ever. So, and we didn't even have YouTube back then. And so it just, the picture just poop went right over my head. So I had to ask about it, and often a lot of questions to clarify. And they were incredibly patient, and they would, say again what they said. They would put it in a different way. They would use a different kind of story. They taught a lot in stories. Their way of teaching is called being a storyteller. That's their kind of medicine, crystal medicine and storytelling medicine, telling of medicine stories. So there's, just average stories that turn out to be medicine stories, because you hear somebody tell that story and it sticks in your head for the rest of your life, and it keeps popping back up, and you think about it and you're learning from it. That makes it a medicine story. People can learn from it if it sticks in their mind. And a picture is going to stick in their mind a lot more than anything else. So we teach a lot with pictures and stories, and put ideas in that kind of framework as much as possible, which makes it easier to learn and easier to remember. It's a good thing they're repeated, because in the beginning, especially, I needed a lot of complete repetition. And with the Egyptian teacher, she wasn't opposed to questions. Certainly at certain times, she would ask for them. But she would let you repeat the teaching. She'd be teaching that class again to another little group of people, very small little groups, and she would let you attend. And after I took that first class with her, she let me sit in on every class that she taught, up to a certain point, and then she didn't. But for most of the time I studied with her, she let me sit in on all the classes. And I was taking notes, and after a while she let me record them. And I would listen to the recordings over and over and over and over. And we would record everything. With the Hetakas, they didn't let me record anything. I couldn't write about it. I couldn't tell anybody. Couldn't do tapes after the fact or during the fact, of the teaching. So that was hard and would slip sometimes, especially with the kids. My kids were little at the times, and sometimes it just sort of snuck out before my little editor in my mind was more trained. Didn't let things slip out like that. But repetition, they just kept teaching things over and over, and I had to do them over and over and over and over again. And the whole way of the way they practice, the Hetakas from Peru, the things you learn in the very beginning are things that you do all the way along, and that everything else is built out of. Everything, all the teachings, all the different ceremony designs, the basic concepts, everything is built on what went before. So if you didn't understand what went before, you were going to be really in trouble. And I figured out that the same with the Egyptian teaching, everything was built on the beginning and what went before. And so I needed to learn. And it was like learning a whole new foreign language. It took me a couple of years to be able to relate it to the stuff from Peru and figure out that they were actually talking about the same thing. And when I started to realize that, I could ask the Hetakas about it, or telling them that, the Egyptian way of talking about this was blah, 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 blah. And this is how it's talked about, taught, it's done. This is what they think. And is this the same as this thing that you taught? And it usually was. It's just that, I think originally they probably came from the same places. And that's the stars, the different star people. But through all these different cultures and so many millennia, that it took on the cultural stories and ways of talking and language. And it looked like something completely alien, just so different.
Okay.
So that's why I answer questions.
I got to share one more thing before you cut me off, Helmut, because I promised that I would.
And I took most of the time.
Too late. Too late.
I want to say that another benefit to the apprenticeship program is the commitment. I mean, as a teacher and a mentor that you are for us, I mean, you can see all the years that you committed to learn these ancient arts and to share them with us. And when you join the apprenticeship program, there's a part of you that knows that, yeah, I want to learn this too. And you commit to it, unlike you do anything else in our modern society, because a lot of our modern society is give it to me quick. I just want to digest it and puke it out. Well, this is not that kind of program. This is one where you embody it, you become it, and you practice it every single day.
Absolutely.
Beautiful.
Totally.
Once you learn how to change your attention and broaden it, broaden your perspective, broaden all your horizons, the box is falling apart. There's no way to go back. And there's no desire to go back to the way you were, because you could see what it was and how incredibly limiting that way of living and being asleep and diminished, just everything, your physical senses, your spirit senses, your consciousness, everything diminished, squished. And there's only going forward and looking for more, and it's fun and it's juicy and it all feels good. And it starts with what you got to learn first, and it's all about attention.
Thank you, Kay.
Thank you.
We didn't let
Thank you guys.
Yeah, we didn't get Helmut a term.
Sorry, Helmut.
Sorry, we're out of time.
It's discrimination.
Do you got a little thing to say before you end everything?
Yeah, it seems like half the years of my life I've been an apprentice. So my question is, why am I still a gopher?
You haven't gotten it right yet, obviously.
Oh, beautiful talk. Thank you so much. Thank you, Kay. Thank you, Loras. Beautiful. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And we have an apprenticeship starting in April. So get in touch with us if that intrigues you. And we see you next time. Love you.
Love you. Here's to beauty.
Bye.
Bye-bye.